tell us a little bit about yourselves and about your family and where you come from in terms of your home church. And so start with your family, that would be really good.
Okay, we have 4 children. We have Jessica, she's not here so I can talk about her, that's okay. She's just become a teenager, she's 13 and she's wonderful. We have Naomi who's 11, Jack who is 6, and Jonathan who is 2.5. You'll have seen him running around. He's the 2.5-year-old who looks like a 4-year-old. So that's us.
Where are you from?
I'm from Manchester.
You'll forgive her for that, it's not her fault.
Arthur is from London, so we are a family divided over football. I obviously support Manchester United, as do 3 of our 4 children, and Arthur has only so far convinced Jessica to support Arsenal.
Okay.
Well, Jack did until 2 months ago, and then he came up to me and said, "Dad, my brain told me to support Manchester United." So I looked in his ear and I said, "I can't see anything in there, son."
Okay, that's really good. So tell us about the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary that you have some part of.
Yeah, sure. That's where I'm based, at ABTS. Lebanon is an incredibly strategic country in the Middle East, in that it's the only country where followers of Christ from Muslim backgrounds can come and study Christian theology. And so we have students from all across the region, all across North Africa, through to Egypt, Sudan, South Sudan, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Jordan, and they come and study with us for up to 3 years to get a degree in theology, and then they go back to their home countries. Thank you. They go back to their home countries and they are leaders of the church in the region, one of the toughest regions in the world, I would suggest. And so it's an incredible privilege to be able to be part of that, and I learn far more than I ever teach. My area is particularly in youth and community development and kind of practical theology. But then also, one of my main roles is within the Institute of Middle East Studies. And our mandate is to bring about positive transformation in thinking and practice between Christians and Muslims, the Middle East and beyond. And so we have a range of activities we do. We run a master's program in Middle East and North African Studies that Louise is a straight A student on. She's very bright. I don't mark any of her papers, by the way. Sorry, getting worried. We run an annual consultation, and at the moment the theme is looking at discipleship for those from the region, so a very sensitive but important issue. We run a blog that we post weekly kind of posts on various things to do with Christian-Muslim relations or East-West relations. And then I'm particularly involved in a project called The Feast, which is an interfaith youth project that stems from Birmingham here in the UK. And what we're doing in Lebanon is really exciting. We're bringing together 4 youth groups, one Sunni Muslim, one Shiite Muslim, one Maronite Catholic youth group, and one evangelical youth group through Youth for Christ. And we're working with World Vision and Youth for Christ to do this. And so essentially we're about bringing young people who are passionate about their faith, albeit different faiths, who want to use their faith to inspire them to make a difference in the world. And if anywhere needs people of faith coming together to build peace and create friendships, it's Lebanon. And so it's amazing that you have Christian young people helping Sunni and Shiite Muslim young people build peace together, as well as kind of the Christian-Muslim dynamic. And so that's something that I'm really, really excited about that we're involved in.
That's great. And how long have you been at the college? Or in Lebanon?
Yeah, I spent a year in Lebanon back when I was young, single, had hair, was considerably thinner. When I was about 20 years old, fell in love with the country and visited many times after that. But we moved there as a family 10 years ago now. So yeah, it's our 10th anniversary of being in Lebanon. And so Jessica was 3, Naomi was 18 months when we moved there, and then Jack and Jonathan were both born there.
That's great. So you're part of Arthur Baptist Church. Just tell us a little bit more about that. Is that how you pronounce it?
Haddon. That's not bad at all, yes. We joined Haddon Baptist Church now about 7 years ago. And when we joined the church, it was on average a congregation of about 40 or 50 people. But they'd just got a new pastor, and they had got a vision. And they'd always thought that God wanted them to complete the sanctuary. But as we were joining them, they really felt that God was saying, no, you've got to convert the top floor into a children's ministry floor. Which, as we came with 2 children and we doubled the amount of young people in the church, this seemed a rather strange thing for the church to be doing, but they were really convinced that this was where God was calling them. Well, to cut a very long story short, with all this has happened in the country and God incredibly blessing what we're doing, over the summer the church is now seeing over 700 people worshipping with us every week. And our children's floor is seeing over 100 young people using it on a Sunday, and it being used every week, every day of the week, for ministry to children in need. So it is incredible what God is doing in our church.
And most of the newcomers over the last 4 years are refugees, they're asylum seekers, they're people not from Christian or evangelical backgrounds at all, and so they're coming in and feeling welcomed and accepted and loved, and the church is providing kind of practically for their needs in some cases, but also doing discipleship. We have nearly 100 home groups or life groups meeting each week in various parts of Beirut and the areas surrounding it, and then busloads of people coming in every Sunday morning or now Saturday evening as well. So it's unprecedented what God is doing, and we wouldn't believe it if we weren't there. It's messy, it's confusing, it's exhausting, and yet at the same time it's exhilarating and incredibly exciting to be part of that.
When Arthur was in Lebanon as a young man with hair, it was just at the end of the Civil War when the Christians and the Syrians were fighting each other. And so now that our church actually has probably more Syrians in it than Lebanese, is...
Not probably, definitely.
Okay, definitely has. But what we are seeing is Lebanese Christians learning to love their enemy. It's not easy, it's not straightforward, it's very messy. But one of my friends has a bullet in her shoulder that came from a Syrian gun when she was a child playing. And now she is involved in ministry with Syrians every day. And she has a passion and a love that comes from Jesus for this ministry. And this is just one story of countless stories we can tell you of people who have learned in a very, very real way to love their enemy. And I think it's that love that has transformed our church, because the refugees in our country, like refugees unfortunately in most countries, don't feel wanted, they don't feel loved, they don't feel cared for. But in our church they found a place where they are loved, where they are valued. And beyond anything else we do, and we do a lot of practical caring, I think that love has touched them in a very deep way. And I think that has shown them more profoundly than anything else that God cares about them in the midst of their crisis.
That's great. Arthur, I notice you've got some papers in your hand.
I do.
You want to tell us, I assume you've got some papers that you can leave this.
We've got some. Unfortunately, there's been a problem with the post, and so we haven't got a box of stuff that we were meant to get. We've got a few things from our church specifically. There's a booklet about different things that Hadith Baptist Church is involved in. Then there's a leaflet about the different ways that our church has responded to the refugee crisis. So we are involved in relief, and we're involved in discipleship, but we're also involved in education. And Louise runs an amazing project called the Learning Support Project, which works with both Syrian and Kurdish children, but also with Lebanese children who are in the government schools. So most of the Syrian kids haven't been able to find places. And so when we hear news stories about a lost generation, we have lost a generation. What will happen in Syria long term is a disaster, because there's at least 4 years worth of children who have missed all education. And so what we're doing, a very small project, working with 30 or so children. We have social worker, project workers, teachers, small group class sizes, really investing in the lives of children and their families and communities. But also bringing, one of the issues where you work in a refugee context is the host nation feel very kind of neglected. So Lebanon has had a massive influx. We have maybe 50% of the population of Lebanon are not Lebanese. You can't imagine that demographic anywhere else in the world.
And we're worrying in this country with immigration about 0.8%.
Absolutely. And so our daughter doesn't understand the news when she watches it here, to be honest. But Lebanon is unprecedented. There's nowhere else in the world that comes close to it. But it's also a fractured country, infrastructure doesn't work, we don't have enough electricity, we're always cutting, we're going on to a generator, no water, not enough jobs, so it's a mess. And yet what we're trying to do is also bring together Lebanese kids with Syrian and Kurdish, young people, children from different religious backgrounds, to try and model something positive of peace and reconciliation, as well as providing high quality education in small groups. And so Louise runs that project, which is amazing. And then we have a couple of BMS booklets. There's Engage, which I think you have some already at the back, but we'll leave some more. Really good magazine about lots of the stuff that God is doing around the world with and through BMS. And then also, if you have a real heart to pray for BMS, for us, for others, there's a 24/7 prayer partners, and that explains how you can kind of be involved in praying and giving and finding out more about what goes on at BMS.